I slept with my ex, but we used protection, so it doesn't count, my wife told me. I didn't raise my voice. I shut off the burner, wiped grease from my hands, and let the math do what anger never could. That night at O'Malley's, a manila envelope hit the bar. Tuesdays, Thursdays, downtown Marriott. I fix AC units and vents. Patterns are how I keep people comfortable. Patterns are also how you find rot. Her phone had been face down for weeks. New perfume we couldn't afford. Showers the second she walked in. You're paranoid, she'd smile. Paranoia doesn't come with receipts. I didn't argue with her logic. I measured it. I documented it. I put my life on the same clipboard I carry onto rooftops in July. Temps high, margin of error low. Because if it doesn't count, then nobody should mind a little accountability. I fix broken systems. This time, it was my own. I used to know Lauren's schedule like the back of my own hands. When the key hit the lock, when the kettle whistled, when she'd stand in the doorway and ask how my day went. Then dinners got cold. She started texting in the garage before coming in, like the house needed a buffer. I told myself it was a busy season, that HR people get buried at quarter end. But the late nights stacked up like filters I kept meaning to change. She'd say traffic, I'd say okay. She'd say team huddle, I'd say okay. It was the repetition that got me. Not one late night, 10. Not one story, 5 versions. When a system repeats an error, it's not noise anymore. It's a pattern. I set her plate in the oven and let it warm while the TV murmured at me. At 10:43 p.m., headlights finally slid across the living room. The door opened. She smiled, too wide, too practiced. Don't wait up next time, she said. That was the moment I decided I would. The next clue wasn't a clue until it wouldn't wash off my mind. Perfume. Not the citrus stuff I wrapped at Christmas, the one with the silver bow. This was heavy and expensive, like velvet in a bottle. It hung in the hallway long after she'd passed, the kind of smell you remember from a hotel elevator, cleaner than life and too polished to be home. She started showering the second she walked in. No kiss, no, how was your day? Just the quick tap-tap of heels to tile and water thundering like applause. I stood there with my dinner plate, hearing the pipes work, thinking how hot water has a way of relaxing people and erasing evidence. I wasn't looking to play detective. I just wanted my wife to be my wife. But when a new smell shows up in your house, you either open a window or you figure out the source. She came out in a robe, hair wrapped, skin pink. You're still up? She asked. Long day, I said. Yeah, she answered. Me too. Her phone lived face down now, like it had grown modest or guilty. You can tell a lot from how someone treats a rectangle of glass. She used to leave it on the counter while we cooked, laughing at videos, handing it to me to show the dog doing something dumb. Lately, it was glued to her palm or tucked under a napkin. Lock clicks are tiny, but once you notice, you can't unhear them. You're paranoid, Jack, she said, finding me looking too long. I wanted to say paranoia doesn't put timestamps on hotel bills. Instead, I shrugged and rinsed my plate. There's a part of a man that wants to believe the best, even when the parts don't fit. That night, she took a call on the patio, whispering her laughs. The porch light threw her silhouette against the blinds, a curve of shoulder, a tilt of head I used to recognize from across a crowded room. When she came back in, she kissed my cheek like a receipt. Early day tomorrow, she said. Mike said, you want proof or you want peace? We were at O'Malley's, the kind of bar where the stools remember you. He set a manila envelope between the beer rings. He didn't push it toward me. Mike's an ex-cop. He lets gravity do the selling. I didn't touch it. Not at first. The game on TV was all noise and bright colors, a comfort I couldn't feel. Open it, he said, quiet. Inside, photos. Grainy, like every bad decision. Headlights on the downtown Marriott sign. A license plate I knew better than my own birthday. Tuesdays, Thursdays. Same time, same place, like church for people who had run out of prayers. The air left my chest in a careful exhale. You sure? I asked. Mike tapped the timestamps. Numbers don't have opinions. I slid the photos back, squared the edges, like if I made them neat, they might behave. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just felt the table grow steadier under my elbows, as if choosing to see is what keeps a man from tipping. I fix air, hot to cold, cold to warm, moving it where it should go and sealing it where it shouldn't. You learn to trust patterns. A unit that rattles the same way twice won't heal on the third try. That week, I traced our marriage like ductwork on a blueprint. Tuesday, gym bag, work smile, shower on arrival, phone face down. Thursday, team dinner, same perfume, same water thunder. Friday, girls' night that didn't match anyone's Instagram. Patterns aren't proof, but they're the rails proof rides in on. I started writing times in a notebook like it was a service call. Symptom, duration, frequency. It felt cold, yes. It also felt honest. She asked me why I wasn't talking much. Just tired, I said, and for once I meant it in a way she couldn't hear. A man can carry doubt for miles, but it gets heavier with every step. When she kissed me goodnight, I caught the faintest echo of cologne I don't own. I stared at the ceiling fan and timed its wobble to my new heartbeat. Mike didn't say the name until I asked. Brandon Kincaid, he said, like reading a utility bill. I knew of him. Tall, polished, the kind of handshake that makes you check your own nails. He was Lauren's old story from college, a paragraph she used to tell with a laugh and a wave. People love saying ancient history like time is a disinfectant. Turns out it's more like dust. It settles where you don't clean. Brandon was her boss now. Promotions, late projects, leadership summits, words that look good in emails. I thought about the day she told me he'd be supervising her. It's good for my career, she'd said, kissing me like a punctuation mark. Maybe it was. Maybe this is what success smells like when you can't afford the bottle. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't drive to his address. I flipped to a clean page in the notebook and wrote his name at the top. Brandon Kincaid. If you're going to fix a system, you label every component. Then you decide what to replace. Once the name lived on the page, it started living everywhere. Deadline with Brandon, she'd say, brushing past like a commuter train. She used to tell me about office drama and birthday cupcakes. Now it was deliverables and after hours, except after hours sounded a lot like elsewhere. I asked simple questions. What's the project? How big's the team? And got answers that didn't sit right. Real work comes with details. Lies come with gloss. She thanked me for being supportive, and there was a sting in that, like a pat on the head. I washed the dishes and watched her pack a tote bag she didn't use when we were fine. She paused at the door, held my eyes a second too long, and smiled the kind of smile you give a stranger you might never see again. Don't wait up, she said. Wouldn't dream of it, I answered. After the door latched, I wrote the time down. I circled it. Patterns get bolder when you're brave enough to outline them. I was done being polite to doubt. Saturday, Brooke hosted one of those suburban barbecues where the steaks are thick and the conversations are thin. The men orbit the grill, the women orbit each other. Someone asked about marriage, and Brooke, fresh nails, bright smile, said, "It's like a business. You've got to keep your market value up." The table laughed, a little too loud. I flipped a burger and watched Lauren's face in the reflections of the sliding glass door. She held her wine like a prop. "A little competition never hurt," Brooke added, eyes cutting toward my wife. I felt something old and simple press in my chest, like the moment before a motor seizes. Lauren stepped in with that hostess voice of hers. We should talk about something else. But the sentence dripped with history. The grass smelled like summer. The sky looked clean. Inside me, weather gathered. You don't argue with a forecast. You batten down, or you move inland. I plated the meat, smiled for the photos, and decided I was done guessing. Guessing is for people who don't have tools. Back home, the dishwasher hummed, and the house felt staged, like we were rehearsing for a life neither of us planned to show. I took my work clipboard from the truck, scratched plastic, pen tied on with electrical tape, and set it on the kitchen table. I wrote the date, the time, her arrival, the shower, the scent. I wrote what I could prove and nothing I couldn't. Then I listed what I needed. Bank statements, mileage, calendar syncs, the boring things truth wears when it goes to court. Lauren came downstairs in a t-shirt I bought her in Savannah and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. Rain check, I said. Early job tomorrow. It wasn't a lie. It was a priority. My dad used to say, measure twice, cut once. I used to think that was about wood. Turns out, it's about dignity. I slid the clipboard into a drawer and turned off the lights. Doubt had had its turn. Now it was evidence's move. And evidence, unlike perfume, doesn't fade overnight. I started small, the way you fix a stubborn rattle, one bolt at a time. The clipboard came out every evening. Time in, time out. Mile markers on the odometer. Receipts from places we never used to go. I logged the scent in the hallway, floral, heavy, foreign, and the shower that kicked on before hello. I wrote what I could prove and underlined anything that felt like guesswork. I wasn't trying to catch her in a gotcha. I was trying to tell the truth to a future version of me who might need reminding. People our age know this. Your memory fades where your pride hurts. So I wrote like the pipes would burst if I didn't. She asked why I'd gotten so organized. Busy season, I said, tapping the clipboard like a second heartbeat. The house sounded different when she moved through it. Lighter, faster. I kept my pen moving. Patterns don't reveal themselves all at once. They arrive like slow weather. First the wind, then the smell of rain, then the storm you pretend you didn't see coming. We sat down to chicken and green beans, a normal Tuesday pretending to be normal. She said work had been intense, big deliverables, lots of alignment. I said nothing at first. Then I asked the question that had been chewing at the wires. Did you sleep with him? She set down her fork like it was hot. Jack, don't be crude. We used protection. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because sometimes a man nods to prevent a fire. That's not what I asked, I said. She stared like she could will me into a different topic. It's not like I was trying to hurt you. It was fun. That word, at our table, felt like a tooth chipped on a bone. I looked at my plate and cut the chicken into manageable pieces. You and I define words differently, I said. Protection doesn't make it harmless. The room got very quiet. Dinners used to be laughter and stories. Now they were a courtroom with no judge. She stood up first. I'm showering, she said. Of course she was. There's a version of me that flips the table and punches a wall. That version went out with my 20s and cheap beer. These days I fix what I can reach and record what I can't. When she came back in a robe, I didn't cross-examine. I asked if she wanted tea. She said no, and the no carried a strange relief inside it, like skipping a chore. I learned a long time ago that silence can be a tool or a weapon. I chose tool. I went to the garage and checked my inventory like any other weeknight. Filters, belts, sealant. The small order of a well-stocked shelf calmed me down. You're acting weird, she called. I'm acting steady, I said. It's funny. Men my age get called cold when we're actually just choosing not to add kindling. I slept on my side facing the window, listening to the late train roll past. Somewhere out there, a city was humming along just fine. In my house, we were down to one working unit, self-control. Mike met me behind the shop, coffee in one hand, old habit in the other, a cigarette he wouldn't light. You don't get mad, he said. You get thorough. He's known me since we were idiots with loud cars and louder ideas. You sure you want thorough? I asked. Thorough is paperwork. Thorough is court dates. He tilted his head. Thorough is you. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about documentation, what holds up, what doesn't. We talked about retirement accounts and titles and the way a signature can save you a year of pain if you get it now instead of later. None of this is glamorous. It's not even satisfying. But men who've lived a little understand. Satisfaction is cheap. Security is priceless. Mike clapped my shoulder. This is a marathon, not a bar fight, he said. I looked at the clipboard on my passenger seat and nodded. When you stop trying to win the moment and start trying to win the outcome, your options multiply. So do your responsibilities. I took an early lunch and drove across town to a bank where nobody knew my name. The chairs were too soft, the pen was on a tether, and the paperwork felt weirdly personal. I opened an individual checking account and moved my legal half from savings. Clean, documented, no drama, no secrets, just lines on a page that add up. There's nothing sneaky about protecting yourself. It's the same reason you ladder your smoke alarms and keep a spare tire with air in it. The teller asked if I wanted alerts turned on. Yes, I said. Text and email. Older men talk about peace of mind like it's a boat you buy. It's not. It's a list you follow. Back home, I filed the receipts behind the mortgage papers. When Lauren asked about my day, I told her the truth. Busy calls, hot roofs, the usual. I didn't gloat. I didn't hint. I just made sure the frame would hold when the wall came down. Someone in this house needed to act like tomorrow was coming. The bank statement arrived like any other envelope. Plain, polite, inevitable. I laid it on the counter next to the fruit bowl and waited until dinner. "What's that?" she asked. "Our savings," I said. "Notice anything different?" She scanned the numbers, confusion giving way to heat. "Where's the rest?" "In an account with my name on it," I said. "My legal half." She laughed once, sharp. "That's vindictive. That's practical." I explained it the way I'd explain a fuse box. What's yours, what's mine, what's shared, and what burns down if you overload it. She paced the kitchen, then pointed like she'd found a loophole in the ceiling. "You can't just do that." "I just did," I said, calm like a level bubble. There's a moment when people realize the mess now has a cost. That moment had arrived. She turned off the faucet a little too hard and the pipes groaned. In a different life, I would have fixed the noise right then. In this one, I let it sing. We don't get many crossroads in life. Most of it is potholes and detours. But sometimes the road splits clean. "You can't have both," I told her. "Him or me." I wasn't loud, and I wasn't shaking. I was past both. "It's not that simple," she said. "It is exactly that simple," I answered. "No more Tuesdays and Thursdays. No more hotel points. If you choose us, you transfer departments or you leave the company. We go to counseling. We rebuild." She set her jaw the way people do when they're trying to look older than their choices. "You're making me the bad guy," she said. "No," I said. "You made choices. Now I'm setting terms." A younger me would have begged. The man in that kitchen knew begging only buys you a longer fall. She stared at the bank statement again, like the numbers might blink back a different story. "I need time," she said. "You've had time," I told her. "You have until Friday." The clock started without a sound. By Wednesday, she had a new idea, like paint over damp drywall. "Brandon needs a reliable car while his is in the shop," she said, a little too casual. I told him I'd help with a BMW, maybe co-sign. It was a surreal sentence to hear in my house, like someone suggesting we adopt a bear. I stirred my coffee and let the steam fog my glasses. "With what income?" I asked. She flinched. We both looked at the bank statement again because it had become a third person in the room. "It's temporary," she said. "It'll help his credit." I thought about all the men I've met in attics and basements, folks who stretch $1 until it sings. We don't co-sign luxury for men sleeping with our wives, not in my zip code. "Call the dealership tomorrow," I said. "Tell them no." She called me controlling. I called myself awake. After she left the room, I wrote 2 words on my clipboard. No loan. Even a bad system can't trick you if you keep writing down the truth. Thursday morning, my phone buzzed on the workbench while I was cutting a length of flex duct. Lauren's name. A single line. "Can't do this anymore. Choose him. Want the divorce." I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because my hands needed something to do while my chest caught up. The saw was still humming. I turned it off and let the silence reassemble the room. There's a sorrow in finality that doesn't look like tears. It looks like clarity. I wiped my palms on my jeans and took a slow breath, the way you do before lifting something heavy off a shelf. Then I screenshotted the message and emailed it to myself. Subject line, Friday. Men our age learn to keep records the hard way. I didn't answer her text right then. I didn't send a paragraph trying to convince anyone of anything. I just set the phone down and checked the next job ticket. The day doesn't cancel itself because your life changed at 9:12 a.m. At lunch, I parked behind the supply house where the forklifts nap and called Mike. "It's time," I said. He didn't ask, "Time for what?" He's a friend who listens with his calendar. "Meet me at Alex Whitford's," he said, the lawyer with teeth. We spent an hour stacking the paper we already had, my logs, the photos, the text, the policy pages from Apex Flow, the the client code from Medfront. None of it was fireworks. All of it was leverage. Alex skimmed like a hawk, marking spots with a pen that clicked like a metronome. "You're organized," she said. "We'll keep it that way." When we finished, Mike leaned back and gave me a look I've only seen twice. Once at my wedding, once at my father's funeral. Respect, sure, but also the quiet recognition that a chapter had slammed shut. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I watched the lights change and obeyed every one. That's the thing about rules. When you decide to follow them, they work for you. Mike and I met at my kitchen table because good fights start with coffee and paperwork, not fists. He laid out a checklist the way only an ex-cop can. Dates, times, locations, who knew what, when. We cross-referenced my logs with the photos and the text Lauren sent. Then we printed Apex Flow's employee handbook, sections on fraternization, supervisory relationships, gift policy, billable hours. It read like a map of red flags. I highlighted, Mike tagged, and the pile grew into something with a spine. Men my age know this rhythm from insurance claims and home appraisals. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen. We drafted a clean cover letter, plain language, no adjectives, just facts, and addressed it to HR and corporate compliance. Before we sealed the envelope, Mike asked, "You sure?" I looked at the pages and saw months of my life telling the truth back to me. I wasn't lighting a fuse. I was flipping a breaker. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is follow the rules exactly. Apex Flow's rules weren't hard to understand. They were hard to ignore. Supervisors can't date direct reports. Conflicts must be disclosed. Expenses must reflect actual work performed. Simple. The handbook even mentioned client trust, particularly with keystone accounts like Medfront Industries. Medfront wasn't just any logo. It was 70% of Apex Flow's revenue, the kind of partner that expects dull honesty, not romance at the Marriott. I pulled the expense policy and matched it against the timestamps in those photos. Tuesdays and Thursdays looked suspiciously billable. That detail wasn't vengeance, it was arithmetic. In the trades, we call it spec compliance. You either meet code or you don't. When a contractor cuts corners and the inspector shows up, it isn't personal, it's corrective. I thought about every attic I'd crawled through, every time I told a homeowner the ductwork wasn't up to standard. They never thanked me that day. They thanked me when the house held temperature. This would be like that. Thankless now, necessary later. We packed the HR binder and drove. People hear nuclear option and picture fireworks. Real life is quieter. It looks like forms filled right, attachments labeled, and a timestamp you can defend in front of anyone's lawyer. We submitted the packet the way the policy said. Secure upload to HR, CC to compliance, acknowledgement requested. No anonymous tip, no burned CD in a brown envelope, just my name and the truth with headers. On the way out of Alex Whitford's office, I told her, no theatrics. She smiled like a surgeon who's seen every kind of rupture. "You hired me for outcomes," she said. I drove home under a plain sky and watched the turn signals blink. Left, right, left. Small promises the system makes to itself. Men get tempted to send a message. Paperwork already is a message. It says, I will not be baited. I will not be sloppy. I will not be the story. The nuclear option isn't blowing something up. It's making sure the blast radius is your opponent's choices and the policy they signed. HR didn't call. HR emailed, tight, courteous, full of calendar links. Thank you for your submission. We've opened an investigation. Corporate speak for someone's day just got real long. By Thursday afternoon, word reached me the way news always does in a mid-sized city. Too fast to be rumor, too slow to help. Lauren and Brandon were suspended pending investigation. No laptops, no building access, badges inactive. If you've ever worked a union job and felt the air change when a foreman gets pulled aside, you know the weather I'm describing. It isn't thunder, it's pressure. She texted me, "What did you do?" I stared at the bubbles and didn't answer. There's nothing to say when the process you both agreed to finally wakes up. That night, the house was a museum of everyday things. 2 coffee mugs, 1 pair of boots by the door, a dent in the couch cushion where arguments go to nap. I slept fine for the first time in months. Accountability is a firm mattress. She showed up in the driveway without calling, a habit we'd earned the hard way. Her eyes were red, not soft. "You're destroying my life," she said, voice frayed. I leaned on the hood of my van and let the metal steady me. Men learn to use objects that can't be moved. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I turned on the lights." She shook her head. "You went to HR. You CC'd compliance. Do you know what that looks like?" I nodded. Like a policy doing its job. She paced, arms folded like she was cold even though the evening was warm. "It wasn't serious," she said. "It was contained." I thought about containment, duct tape and false ceilings, how pressure always finds a seam. "Serious or not, it happened at work, on work time with work power," I said. "That counts." Her shoulders slumped. I wanted to reach for her and I didn't. Love is not the absence of standards. She wiped her face and asked, "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "we both tell the truth." The next morning, Alex slid a legal pad across her desk. "We keep this simple," she said. "Facts, financials, custody contingencies if needed. No fishing expeditions, no character assassinations." I appreciated the clarity. Men my age don't need another speech. We need a plan. We walked through assets like we were inventorying a work truck, house, retirement accounts, the paid-off van that smells like summers I earned. Alex asked for a timeline, and I handed her the log. She read in silence, pen tapping a slow rhythm. "You've been careful," she said. "Keep being careful." I told her I wasn't angry. She said anger is loud and sloppy. This wasn't. She asked what I wanted. "A fair shake," I said. "And daylight." She nodded. "You'll get daylight." We discussed service, process, the order of operations that turns chaos into court dates. When I left, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the storm. Alignment. Not peace. Not yet. But the hum a machine makes when you've tightened the right bolts. Lauren texted that she wanted to mediate, a word people reach for when they mean control the damage. We met in a coffee shop where the chairs wobble and the pastries look better than they taste. She started with memories, beach trips, our first apartment, the dog we couldn't keep because the landlord was allergic to joy. I listened because some good things were true. Then she said, "We can keep this friendly." Friendly. Like we were divvying up a garage sale, not 8 years. "We can be civil," I said, "but friendly isn't on the table." She looked wounded, like I'd shut a door she was sure would stay open. "Mediation keeps it private," she tried again. "Private is what got us here," I said. The barista called out a name that wasn't either of ours, and for a second we both laughed, because the absurdity had to leak somewhere. "I don't hate you," I told her. "I'm just done letting consequences bounce off you and hit me." She nodded without understanding. Some lessons arrive after the bill. Alex doesn't do drama, she does sequence. "We'll be ruthless," she said, "but only with the facts." That meant clear filing, timely service, full disclosures, and zero public gloating. No internet victory laps, no late-night texts. Men who have survived layoffs and busted transmissions know the quiet grind. You keep your head down and do the next right thing. We gathered employment records, HR policies, expense reports, and anything with a timestamp. Alex drafted a letter to Apex Flow's counsel, polite, direct, entirely lethal if misread. I asked if we were pushing too hard. She shook her head. "This isn't pressure, it's precision." News about Brandon didn't arrive like a headline. It seeped in, one coworker's whisper, one email forwarded too many times. HR had started asking broader questions, the kind that reach into old calendars. It turned out Tuesdays and Thursdays weren't new. Other names surfaced, other hotel rewards, other business dinners that never made it onto expense forms. I wasn't the only husband in this town learning new geography. The word pattern burned a hole in my chest. In my work, a pattern helps you fix the unit. In life, it tells you who's going to keep breaking it. I sat in my van while the engine idled and watched people walk into a grocery store, kids tugging sleeves, wives carrying lists, men comparing apples. Regular life, the kind Brandon hadn't chosen for a while. Mike texted, "More women. Years back." I closed my eyes a second longer than a blink and let the engine hum steady me. Bad systems don't fail by accident. Someone keeps turning the wrong screw. When HR connects dots, the picture gets ugly fast. Lauren wasn't the love story. She was a slot in a schedule. Convenient is a cruel word because it sounds like a favor. It isn't. It's a label you put on people when you plan on leaving them where you found them. I thought of the college story she once told me about Brandon, how it had ended with a shrug. Maybe the shrug never really ended. Maybe it just waited. Alex called to say several employees had come forward. "This bolsters your timeline," she added gently, like she knew I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't. Relief isn't joy. It's the mercy of no longer being lied to. I brewed coffee I didn't need and stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the hall, the same place I'd smelled that perfume the first time. "Not special," I said out loud, just to hear the truth in a human voice. The word echoed in the quiet house, and strangely, it didn't echo back. Alex walked me through the paternity process like a mechanic explaining a rebuild. Simple steps, no promises. I'd kept a timeline of our intimacy because I was trying to be sane inside chaos. Dates, gaps, the month that went cold long before we spoke it out loud. A younger man might scoff at writing down private things. An older one knows memory goes soft where pain lives. Lauren said a test wasn't safe. Alex raised an eyebrow and slid a pamphlet across the desk. Facts can be boring. They're also stubborn. That night I set the appointment reminder on my phone, then sat on the back steps and listened to a neighbor's sprinkler tick, tick, tick across his lawn. Routine saves a yard. It can save a mind, too. I didn't want the test. I wanted a life where a test wasn't necessary. Wanting and needing are different toolboxes. I picked up the one in front of me and tried not to think about Christmases with a question mark in every photo. Before the blood draw, I laid out the timeline the way I would a schematic. March dates, the last time we touched without a shadow over it. The day she said she was too tired. The night she showered instead of talking. I wasn't trying to win an argument with a spreadsheet. I was trying to remember how the slope started. Gentle at first, then obvious, then a slide you couldn't climb back up. I stared at the notebook and saw my handwriting from the early weeks. Small, neat, hopeful. By the later pages, the numbers looked like fence posts on a long road. I thought of my dad teaching me to mark studs before cutting drywall. "You mark what you can't see," he'd said. That's what the timeline was. Marks on a wall I couldn't see through. I closed the book and put it in the drawer with the warranty papers we never need until we really, really do. The day the results came, the envelope was heavier than paper. I didn't open it right away. You learn in this life that some information lands better on a steady heart. I made coffee, washed the mug I'd just used, then sat and read the line you can't unread. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. No fireworks, no fist pump. Just the chair under me doing its quiet job, same as always. I forwarded a copy to Alex, attached the time-stamped logs, and put the original in my safe. People think relief feels like air. Sometimes it feels like weight, like a bar you've been under that finally racks. I went outside and watched a squirrel fail at a bird feeder with unbelievable optimism. "Not the father," I said, and the words didn't break me or make me. They just settled. Inside the house, the fridge kicked on. Machines know their purpose. I was still finding mine. Lauren lost her job the way people fall through rotten decking. One step that looked safe, then nothing underneath. HR escorted her out. Box, badge, silence. She texted me from the parking lot, words running together like rain. "Please talk to me. I don't have anyone else." For a long time, I would have rushed in with a blanket and a plan. I stared at the screen and let the urge pass. Consequences aren't a fire you put out with attention. They're a lesson you stop interrupting. She called next. I let it ring until the voicemail picked up and then listened to the message once, the way you listen to a storm forecast you can't change. Mike sent one line. Suspended, terminated. I sat on the porch and looked at the screws in the railing I set last spring. They were still tight. Not everything loosens when neglected. Some things hold because someone took the time to install them right. I hadn't installed this. Word was Brandon's wife filed that week. Assets frozen, accounts combed, the kind of audit only betrayal earns. The Mustang went first. Then the boat pictures disappeared from his social pages. A friend of a friend said the house might not be the house for much longer. I've seen this in neighborhoods where a man overextends on square footage and underinvests in foundations. The finishes gleam while the joists complain. It holds, until it doesn't. I didn't gloat. I went to a job across town and replaced a blower motor for a retiree who paid in exact bills from an envelope, each crease a history. "You're fair," she said, because I didn't add a charge for a stripped screw. I drove away thinking fairness isn't charity, it's math with a conscience. Brandon had skipped the math. Now the conscience was showing up with a clipboard. Mike texted, "Kids with their mom. He's in a rental." I put my phone down and focused on the road. Some wrecks you don't rubberneck. A local reporter sniffed around Apex Flow when the HR dust turned into a weather system. Not a scandal piece, yet, but enough for old stories to find daylight. A receptionist, a coordinator, a temp from 2 summers ago. Different women, same arc. Attention that felt flattering until it felt like a trap. Private meetings that looked like mentorship until the door clicked. I wasn't interview material. I wasn't a crusader. I was a man who wrote things down and handed them to the right desk. Still, hearing other voices say what I'd suspected pulled something tight inside my chest. Anger, yes, but also a stubborn kind of respect. Telling the truth costs. Older men know that because we've paid it in smaller currencies. Backing a buddy at work, refusing to fudge hours, owning the dent in the company van. I sat in my quiet kitchen and let their words do what truth does. Clear the fog without promising a sunny day. Lauren came by with eyes that had learned new math. "I'm sorry," she said at the door, simple and finally honest. The sentence landed, and for a moment the house remembered our better days, paint colors we chose together, a stain on the carpet from a dinner we laughed about for a week. She sat at the table where we'd divided bank statements and once planned vacations. "I made a mistake," she said. "A huge one." I nodded. "Sorry is a tool, it isn't a fix." "I can get counseling," she offered. "Change departments, start over anywhere with anyone." The offers piled up like coupons that expired last month. I wanted to grant a wish that didn't exist. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just can't build on this." She cried, the kind that shakes shoulders and embarrasses both people in the room. I brought her water and a box of tissues, then stood because sitting felt like lying. In another life, this talk would have saved us. In this one, it was a memorial. She asked the question people ask when the credits are already rolling. Is it really over? I looked at the walls we painted eggshell white because it hides scuffs and thought about all we'd tried to hide. "It's too late," I said, and the words didn't taste cruel. They tasted accurate. She whispered that Brandon said protection meant it didn't count. I felt something hard and clear settle in my spine. "It counted for everything," I said. We stood in a silence that wasn't empty. It was full of the things we didn't fix when they were small. She asked if I would at least promise to be kind. "I will be decent," I said. "Decent has boundaries." She left with the same tote bag she'd started carrying when the late nights began. The door clicked softly behind her. I exhaled, long and even, and turned off the kitchen light. The room went dark the way rooms do when a day ends. Tomorrow had work in it. So did I. Mike called just after dusk, the hour when honest men come home and desperate men go hunting. "Heads up," he said. "Brandon's circling the drain, drinking, saying your name too much." I looked at the lock on my back door the way you look at an old friend. Grateful, but not naive. Men our age know the sound of coming trouble. It's the quiet between sentences. "You want me nearby?" Mike asked. "No," I said, "just awake." We didn't trade hero lines. We traded logistics. Phones charged, porch lights on, doors checked. I walked the perimeter like I have 100 job sites, eyes on corners, hands in pockets so they don't make promises I can't keep. Inside, I set my keys in the same dish I've used since we moved in and watched the street through the blinds. The neighborhood dog barked at a leaf. A freight train moaned a county away. Ordinary sounds, the kind you'll miss if something goes wrong. I turned down the TV and told the house, "We're ready." Preparation isn't paranoia, it's adulthood. I checked the camera feeds, the porch sensors, the floodlights. Nothing fancy, nothing cinematic, just the sort of gear a man buys after too many news stories. I tested the intercom, spoke into the vent like a dad doing a magic trick. Testing, testing. My voice came back steady. I walked the hallway and let my hand ride the wall, a ritual from childhood that says, "This is mine to protect." I set my phone on the counter with the screen brightness low and turned off every light I didn't need. The house exhaled into a quieter version of itself. Out back, the motion light blinked once, then settled. In the garage, I glanced at the toolbox and felt the old itch to do something. I didn't. Tonight wasn't hands-on. Tonight was eyes open. If you've ever sat beside a loved one in a hospital and watched the monitors more than the patient, you know the posture. You don't fix. You watch. You wait. You decide when it's time. You can tell the difference between a raccoon and a man by the way a shadow commits. At 3:02 a.m., a shape cut across the yard like it owed the night money. The camera feed popped alive. My phone buzzed on the counter. I felt calm in the same way I do before pulling a heavy motor. Focused. Strangely grateful the moment had finally picked a lane. The back handle rattled once, twice, then went mean. Wood complained. Hardware answered. A pane gave up with a sound glass only makes when it means it. The door swung. Cold air crawled across the floor. I was already 3 rooms away, out of sight, exactly where I meant to be. "Welcome, Brandon," I said into the intercom. Not loud, not theatrical, just present. It's funny. The man who's been noisy for months suddenly had nothing to say. Then the footsteps began. He had a tool in his hand and a story in his head where he was the hero. I let the story run. It was almost over. He cleared the threshold and tripped a surprise I'd set weeks ago. Nothing dangerous, nothing you'd need a manual to build, just a loud, humiliating hello that doesn't wash out easy. Dye bloomed where pride should have been. He cursed and wiped, and spread it worse, the way bad choices smear when you touch them. "Show yourself," he shouted, voice punching walls it couldn't dent. Floodlights in the yard kicked on and painted the blinds with stripes. I stayed still, my breathing a metronome, my thumb hovering over a single button I'd promised myself I'd press if he took one more step. "You ruined me," he yelled, now leaving purple handprints like signatures he couldn't deny. The camera in the hall blinked a small red eye, patient as a notary. Older men know this truth. Humiliation isn't violence. It's clarity with color. He staggered toward the kitchen, dripping consequence. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog started again, like even it understood a line had been crossed. I pressed the button and let the house talk. "You're trespassing, Brandon," I said, the way a weather alert says, tornado. Calm, because panic wastes seconds. He spun, swinging at vents and shadows. "Coward," he barked. "Come out." "No," I answered. "I called the police." That part was true now. "You think this counts?" he spat, purple tears bleeding down a face that used to believe in mirrors. "You blew up my life over nothing." I paused, the kind of pause that sets a hook. "No, Brandon, that doesn't count. Choices do." He flinched like the word had weight. She said protection meant it didn't count. There it was, the fairy tale that made adults into children. "And that lie," I said, "counted for everything." He breathed hard, a bull without a field, looking for something to gore. "Why'd you do this to me?" "I didn't," I said. "I documented what you did to yourself." The intercom crackled. His chest heaved. Outside, sirens began their small, distant promise. Sirens always sound closer on television. In real life, they take the road they're given, and the road can be long. Brandon paced a jagged path through my kitchen, each step a fresh stain on tile I used to kneel on to fix the baseboard. He opened drawers and closed them hard, as if courage might be stored next to the spatulas. "Where's the money?" he ranted, as if cash were the hinge his world needed. It wasn't money, it was meaning, and he'd spent his. "There is no money," I said. "Just records." He banged the counter with his palm and left another purple proof. "At my age, you learn there's a mercy in letting someone hear themselves." He didn't hear. "Come out and fight me." The struggle he wanted was the kind that would make everything blurry again. I kept it sharp. "You walked in here," I said. "You can walk back out and wait on the lawn for the officers." Or you can add charges. Your call. He hated choices. He always had. The first flash of red-blue licked the far wall like a warning to the paint. Brandon froze, the way men freeze when they realize the audience has arrived and the show is unkind. He dropped the drawer he'd opened and stared at his hands like they'd betrayed him. The doorbell rang, polite, almost funny. I spoke into the intercom one more time. "That's for you." He snarled, then swung for a camera he couldn't reach, a wild, final gesture that proved the tape would match the report. "This isn't over," he said to the ceiling, to the lights, to anyone but himself. "It is," I answered. "You just don't feel it yet." He took a step toward the hallway like a man considering a race he can't win. Then he did a thing that surprised me. He sat down. On my kitchen chair. Purple, breathing, small. The bell rang again. In the quiet that followed, I could hear my own pulse and the steady tick of the clock over the stove, keeping better time than either of us had. The officers entered with the professionalism of people who have seen every version of this scene. They asked him to stand. He did. They told him to show his hands. He did, and the die made the commands look like captions. "Weapon? No. Anyone hurt? No." They glanced at the cameras, at the door, at the stains. They looked at me from across the room and nodded the way men nod when they understand the assignment. Keep it orderly, keep it lawful, keep it human. Brandon tried words one more time, but words are bad alibis when the paint won't lie. They cuffed him without theater, read what the law requires, and walked him past the same threshold he'd broken. On the porch, the floodlight caught the purple in a way the cameras would appreciate. One officer asked if I needed paramedics. "Just a mop," I said, and surprised myself by half smiling. You learn to clean up after jobs. This was just another job, with better documentation. By morning, a short clip had reached the internet's appetite. A purple man, a calm voice, a clean arrest. Somebody captioned it "Purple Justice." I didn't post it. I didn't share it. But the thing about proof is it travels faster than rumor once it learns how to walk. Neighbors texted. A cousin I haven't seen since '09 sent a thumbs up. Mike wrote, "You handled it," which from him is as close as praise gets. I made coffee and stood in the doorway where I'd once smelled perfume that didn't belong. Same doorway, new air. The clip didn't make me proud. It made me quiet. Consequences with color are still consequences. A man in his 50s doesn't need a viral moment. He needs his house back, his sleep back, his name back. I put my phone face down, not out of secrecy, but relief. The views would do what views do. The system had done what systems should. And for once, I didn't feel the need to explain anything to anyone. By afternoon, Lauren called. I watched the screen light my kitchen and let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was small, the kind of small that remembers being big. "Did he come to see you first?" she asked. "I don't want to know," I said, and meant it. There's a peace in refusing the last piece of gossip that would let you gloat. She started to apologize and I stopped her, not because I'm unkind, but because apologies are for repair. We were past repair. "Are you okay?" I asked, a human question in a room that had seen inhuman hours. "No," she said, "but I will be." I hoped so, truly. I ended the call with a decency I wished we'd both practiced sooner. Then I walked to the sink, filled a bucket, and started scrubbing. The purple came up slower than I liked and faster than I deserved. Each swipe erased a little noise. Outside, a mail truck rattled by. The world kept its schedule. I decided to keep mine. I started with the floor because floors don't argue. Bucket, bleach, a stiff brush that's seen worse garages. The purple came up in halos, lighter with every pass, like a bruise deciding to leave. I replaced the busted latch, tightened the strike plate, vacuumed the glass crumbs the way you vacuum after a Christmas party. Methodical, a little sad, strangely grateful it's over. I took the chair he sat on out to the driveway and hosed it down until the runoff turned from violet to clear. My mother used to say you judge a man by how he cleans, not how he makes a mess. I threw the rag in a contractor bag and tied the knot hard. Then I walked room to room, returning small things to their places. The pen by the phone, the coaster under the mug, Order where chaos had done its lap. The house sounded like itself again. Refrigerator hum, clock tick. I stood in the doorway I'd stood in 100 times and let the quiet do its work. Alex called while I was rolling the trash bin to the curb. They want to settle, she said. Private agreement. Minimal discovery. Quick timeline. I pictured the stack of folders on her desk. Logs, emails, policies, the test results that landed like anvils. What's their ask? I said. 50-50 assets, no alimony, confidentiality. It sounded like someone trying to repaint a wall without scraping the mold. I set the bin down and leaned on the handle, feeling the plastic flex. We've been private enough, I said. We'll be fair, but we won't be blind. Alex didn't cheer. Good lawyers don't. Then we prepare to try it, she said. Discovery continues. Keep your head down. I told her that's the only direction it goes these days. She chuckled once, the professional kind. After we hung up, I watched the sanitation truck lumber up the street, arms reaching, lifting, emptying. There's a comfort in systems doing what they say they do. I wasn't chasing a win. I was protecting tomorrow. Lauren texted that she wanted to meet in person just to talk. I picked a coffee place with too much daylight. She wore that exhausted look people get when sleep won't hold them. We can end this without a circus, she said. You don't want a trial. I took a breath I could measure and let it out slow. I don't want a trial, I said. I want accountability. She slid a printed offer across the table. Clean font, bullet points, hope disguised as terms. I read it twice and set it back between us. See you in court, Lauren. Her mouth fell open like a door off its hinge. Why are you doing this to me? The question lands different when there's a crowd. I didn't look around. I looked at her. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm being decent to myself. We sat with that. The espresso machine hissed. A baby fussed. The world refused to notice our drama. I paid the check and held the door. Courtesy isn't surrender. It's muscle memory. She came by at dusk, the hour when houses glow like promises. No makeup, hair pulled back, the Lauren I remember from road trips and cheap motels where we laughed at how thin the walls were. Please, she said, hands flat on my table like she was bracing for a tremor. Let's talk without lawyers. I poured water and didn't sit. You love avoiding consequences, I said, not cruel, just accurate. She winced, like honesty had sharp corners. I made a mistake, she said. One mistake. I shook my head. A mistake is a wrong turn. You moved in. She told me Brandon had called her an hour before the arrest, that he'd promised things men only promise when they need a witness. I didn't bite. The past few months had taught me that pity is a leash. I'm not your enemy, I said. I'm your ex-husband in progress. She cried, quiet, as if volume would push me back into our old script. I stood where I was. Boundaries aren't walls, they're door frames. She tried a different angle, the one where we remember the beginning like it predicts the ending. Do you remember Savannah? She asked. The storm, the power outage, the candles we stole from the hotel. I smiled because I'm not stone. I remember, I said. Good nights don't erase bad months. She pressed on. He said protection meant it didn't count. There it was again, that line that shrunk adult choices to child math. And you believed him because it was easier than believing me, I said. A shadow moved across her face. Guilt, maybe, or the late arrival of common sense. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. But you did, I answered, steady as a level bubble. Older men don't enjoy speeches. We aim for sentences that hold weight. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm ending us with the same honesty we should have used to save us. She nodded like a student who finally reads the problem and knows she's out of time. On the porch, she shifted the ground one last time. I'm pregnant, she said, the words small and nuclear. I'd known the rumor and ignored it the way you ignore a forecast until the sky gets mean. I didn't flinch. We tested, I said. I'm not the father. She nodded, tears slipping clean tracks. I know. I was hoping. I don't know what I was hoping. Hope is a generous liar. I leaned on the rail I installed last spring, the screws still bright where the sun hit them. I won't be cruel, I said. But I won't be your plan B. She asked what she was supposed to do. There's a particular ache in hearing the person who broke your house ask you for tools. Call your family, I said. Call your doctor. Call HR about benefits you're still entitled to. Build a support system that isn't me. She whispered, I can't do this alone. I looked past her to the streetlights coming alive. You're not alone, I said. You're just not with me. In the weeks that followed, we spoke like people who share a history but not a future, about the storage unit, the dog we gave to her mother when schedules stopped touching, the last of the bills. I sent what I owed on time because decency doesn't need an audience. She sent short replies that didn't ask for more than facts. Once she wrote, "Thank you for not hating me." I stared at the screen and thought about the difference between hate and boundaries. Hate is loud. Boundaries are structural. Mike swung by and fixed a loose fence panel while I held the screws and handed him a beer after. How you sleeping? He asked. Better, I said. Not good. Better. He nodded like that's the only direction that counts. I'm a man who believes in maintenance. Change the filters, check the belts, oil the hinges. Mercy's like that. It isn't a flood. It's a schedule you keep, with edges you honor, so the whole thing doesn't collapse under good intentions. On a clear Saturday, I carried a box to the backyard. Folders, receipts, prints, the timeline that had kept me sane and sad in equal measure. I lit the fire pit the way you light a grill when company's coming, except this heat was just for me. Paper curls fast when it meets flame. Photos warp like they're trying to escape the moment they trapped. I fed the pit slow, not as a ceremony, but as a ledger closing with neat final lines. My dad used to say, "Don't keep what you can't carry when you run." I'm not running. I'm traveling lighter. A neighbor waved over the fence. I waved back. The last page to go was the printout of that text. Choose him. The edges went first, then the middle sighed into orange. I stayed until the coals thought they were done and stirred them once more because unfinished fires come back to revisit you. Not this one. This one learned its lesson. Inside, I opened the windows. The house inhaled like it had been holding its breath since spring. I put on fresh sheets, set 2 mugs in the cabinet even though one would do, and started a pot of chili that would last me through football and Monday. Simple food, simple plans. I fixed a cabinet hinge that had been catching and oiled the front door so it wouldn't announce me to the neighborhood. Little things you let slide when your life is a courtroom. I took a walk just before dark, past mailboxes that lean, kids riding in crooked circles, an old man sweeping leaves from a driveway he's already swept twice. That's how some of us stay sane. We tidy the edges while the middle figures itself out. Back home, I stood in the living room where the purple had been and saw only clean tile. The clock ticked. The chili simmered. My phone stayed quiet by design. I didn't need answers anymore. I needed a steady week. And tomorrow, I'd give myself one. I used to fix machines. Turns out, consequences fix people. My wife said it didn't count. She was wrong. Everything counts. Always. The logs, the policies, the purple that wouldn't wash off, those weren't about revenge. They were about breathing honest air in my own house again. I can't unbreak what we broke, but I can choose what I rebuild. Quiet mornings, bills paid on time, the kind of sleep that doesn't flinch at headlights. Dignity at my age isn't a speech, it's a schedule. You tighten what's loose, replace what's done, and stop pretending a rattle will fix itself. Tomorrow I'll climb a ladder, check a motor, leave a unit humming like it remembers how. That will be enough. Not victory, alignment. Not triumph, temperature set right and holding. She said it didn't count. Life kept the receipts. And me? I kept my name. What would you fix first, the system or yourself? Comment. Fix myself. Fix the system.